unconscious. And he begins with Freud, who discovered that people have dirty minds, essentially. In other words, he just dropped down one level and saw that there was this whole psychomental life which nobody was talking about, but which was all tied up with how we really think and feel. And then no sooner had he gotten this fairly well laid out and working the way he wanted than his student Jung broke away from him and said, yes, that's all true, but the entire sexual complex has to be centered in a larger sphere, which I will call the collective unconscious, and which will include not simply personal traumatic material and repressed wish fulfillment and all this stuff, but also the traumatic material and suppressed wish fulfillment and psychic dominance of the species. And this seemed like a very far out idea. It meant that we were all somehow connected and that cultural patterns, you see, in the 19th century, they always tried to trace on the ground how a goddess or a magical belief got from one place to another, because they reasoned how else could it be transmitted. Jung blows that all up and says, well, people will spontaneously invent the same religious forms, the same rituals, the same notions worldwide, because that's just how people are. Now I think that what the tryptamine hallucinogens hold out is a new level in defining and enunciating what the unconscious is. It's that beyond the Freudian position, beyond the Jungian concern with the images embedded in the species mind, actually a major portion of what's called the unconscious has nothing to do with human beings and is much more like a landscape or a place than it is like repressed memories or archetypal images. It simply is a place. And many researchers have confirmed that when you take psychedelics, when they start people out on LSD, the first trips are usually personalistically oriented. How screwed up I am, I don't love the right people, I don't like myself, I'm not doing it, all this. And it's very painful for people because it is condensed psychoanalysis, basically. But if they will persist, and many people don't, they just say, my God, who needs this? I'm worried enough as it is. I don't need to dwell. But if you persist, then that stops, because you can only be so screwed up, you know, and you get it worked out. You actually come into a place of maturity. Then the Jungian, the survey of these deeper levels of the psyche, these contact with dominance, seems to be what the psychedelic experience is. And the dominants, though, are usually presented as guardians of gateways, almost in a Gnostic schema where the soul has to ascend through gateways to escape the machinery of fate. If you persist beyond that, you reach the topology that shamanism describes, a place with a howling wind, a doorway onto a desolate plain, a howling wind, all these descriptions, but the main stress is geological and topological, a surface into which you go, no longer self-doubting, or, you know, not at least so self-doubting that it's interfering with your functioning. And this dimension is the one that is real puzzling, because if it was puzzling to explain how the Jungian information was coded in the brain, it's even more puzzling to explain how these topologies with no apparent tangentiality to human concerns could be there. And I think that what's going to have to give way to assimilate all this is the notion that the mind is something causally related to the brain. I don't think it is. And this has been an article of faith for 200 years, that eventually we would show